check 1 2 1 2. Peace and blessings, Sirius Mindz family. Let me know if you can hear me. Peace and blessings. From the Chakaba, Block Boy, Hassan Burton. Peace and blessings. Let me know if you can all hear me. If the sound is coming through clear. Let me know if the mic needs to be adjusted. Let me know if the music needs to be adjusted. Hopefully we resolve some of the technical issues that we had on Tuesday. Hubby, I see you in the house. I'm going to go ahead and let the room continue to populate. I have a couple of announcements I'd like to make before we get the show started tonight. Peace and blessings, family. Blessings, Professor Griff. Good to see you in the house. Peace and blessings, family. Good evening. I hope that all is well this evening. Pardon my absence on yesterday, but 16 had to take a break. Usually when the body says it's time, it's time. And when you fight exhaustion, stress, combination of other things, your body has its way of telling you to keep still. So pardon my absence yesterday, but I feel a little bit better today. And every day I'm continuing to get stronger. I'm focusing on getting my health back on track so I can eliminate some of the medical conditions that I deal with. But in the meantime, it's not about me tonight. I have a kind of serious topic I'd like to talk to the family about, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that is being affected by the topic we have tonight. And if you all don't know what we're going to be discussing, that's going to be weather as a weapon. Weather as a weapon. I want you to let that title soak in while I go over a couple of announcements for tonight. Those of you who want to sign up for the preparedness class, please make sure that you reach out to Professor Griff. His PayPal and Cash App information is in the description box below the video. The purchase price of the class is $25, and that would be this coming Sunday. And Professor Griff, we actually need to make sure that everything is in place for Sunday. As this topic, I've chose it purposely because it's something that's currently affecting my area and some of the other areas that we're going to be discussing this evening. Again, if you want to sign up for the class, if you haven't already signed up, the purchase price is $25. You can pay that through the Cash App, which is $ Professor Griff, or you can pay through PayPal, which is paypal.me/Professor Griff Corp, CORP. Again, Sirius Mindz family, all of that information is below the video in the description box. If you're not able to catch the information that I'm saying and you have an opportunity to write it down, all of that information is below the video in the description box. Family, some of you received an email with tonight's link. If you would like to come on and join the panel for the live stream this evening, those of you who are wanting to join, if you did not get the email and you want to join, where there's a break for me to go in and add you to the panel, I will definitely do so. But those of you who have already received the email, if you want to join, just please make sure that your mic is on mute when you come in. Just make sure your mic is on mute if you want to come in. And also, if you do not want to be seen on camera, that's perfectly okay. Your voice is enough for us. All you have to do is make sure that the camera is turned off. But also, I ask that you please mute your mics on the way in. In the event that someone is speaking, we don't want to cause a disruption. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started with tonight's topic. And I don't want to rush this topic, but it's something that I may need to kind of backtrack a little bit before I go forward, kind of in the same format that I actually teach and develop lesson plans prior to teaching. We kind of run this platform, and when I say we, I'm talking about Professor Griff, I'm talking about myself, talking about you all in the audience. We all have to take into account that this is a teaching platform. And with that being said, because it's a teaching platform, we're here to enlighten and empower other people, give them some information and share experiences so that we can build and dialogue and in hopes of enlightening others. And so that they can help themselves and help others. That's the whole goal of this channel, of this platform. Not here for gossip, especially not this evening, because this is a topic that kind of hits home for me, and it certainly will be a topic that's going to hit home for several of you who have been affected by extreme weather conditions. Again, tonight's topic is weather as a weapon, and I want to open tonight's topic by asking a couple of questions. And before I start asking questions, because I'm going to need you all to, if you want to come onto the platform, no problem. But those of you who remain in the chat, I will ask for your participation as far as researching a few things so that it's not just me giving you information or anyone else just coming to the platform and giving information. I want you all to help those of you who cannot come onto the platform, but you're very active in the chat room. And our regulars are always here to support. But just in the event that we have new people joining us tonight, in the event that we have people who are not very familiar with the platform, make sure that they kind of understand how the platform is run and what is to be gained from this platform. Because our mission is to educate and empower our people. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've been hit by, especially, and I'm going to start with the West Coast. My husband has family on the West Coast, Santa Monica, California, to be exact. And over the last couple of weeks, California has been getting hit pretty bad with a few earthquakes. For those of you who are not familiar with what's been going on in the news because you're too busy watching gossip or you just don't watch the news, this is very important to understand what's going on here and to kind of dive into what could possibly be taking place right before our eyes, and we are not really paying attention to what's going on. But California has been hit with a few earthquakes If anyone is in the chat this evening on the West Coast and has been recently hit with these earthquakes and have been affected by these earthquakes, please let us know. Let us know the experience. How is this affecting a home? How is this affecting going to work, to and from work? If you're a business owner, how is the weather, this extreme weather, actually affecting you? And I'm going to actually tie that into what is currently going on in the weather for those of you who are not actually up to par on what's going on. I do live in the state of Louisiana, and we are currently on standby for extreme weather conditions. New Orleans is currently flooding as we speak, and has been flooding for a couple of days now. And we are all on standby for evacuation at this point for the storm that, by, I don't want to say coincidence because I don't believe in them, but the storm's name is Barry. For those of you who know where that name comes from, some of you in the chat will. I'm sure Professor Griff does. Anyway, tonight I want to talk about how these extreme weather conditions are affecting our country. How it's affecting the globe. How these weather conditions are a global expectation, or how it's affecting the globe on a global scale, not just in this country, but on a global scale. So in order for us to kind of dive into the topic a little bit deeper, I want to backtrack a little bit, and I want to kind of start with a little bit of history. It's called background information. So I see you, Professor Griff. Yes, you know Barry. I know him as well. And for those of you who don't get it, Barry is actually Mr. Obama. Okay. For again, those of you who are wanting to come in, if you don't have the link and you need the link, just let me know. I am reading the chat. I'm trying to keep up with reading the chat and also looking at some research that I have. Need to know if you're wanting to come in. I'm not sure if I gave you the link or not, but I can send it to you real quick. Okay, so need to know you need help getting in. Do you have Google Hangouts? I'm sure someone who's already come onto the platform can show you how it works. I'll be sending you an email while I'm talking. Okay, with that in mind, I want you to keep in mind the earthquakes that are going on currently in California. How many, for those of you who have been keeping up with the news, how many earthquakes has California actually been hit with in the last couple of weeks? Does anybody have that information readily available? I'm sure those of you who have been affected already know the answer to that question. How many earthquakes have they been hit with? Need to know. The link is in your email. I just sent it to you. Okay, I see a lot of you are saying 2. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say they just had another earthquake yesterday or day before. So that would make it 3. That would make it 3. There we go, Paul. I think it's 3 at this point. They got hit with 2 back to back. I think maybe a day or 2 apart, and they just recently got hit with another quake. I want to say yesterday, or it could have been the day before. Yesterday I was ill, so I don't know if it was yesterday. It had to be the day before that I heard about the other earthquake. So there's actually, they've been hit by 3 earthquakes. And that's not counting the aftershock and the tremors that come along with having an earthquake. And these earthquakes are actually pretty strong. You know, they've been in the upper 6 and 7s. So this is not small extreme, I mean small earthquakes we're talking about here. We're talking about something that actually can affect and cause a lot of damage. And Professor Griff asked a very, very good question. And I'd like to hear some more back from the family on the question. He asked, how is the weather affecting the mood of the people? So how is the weather, even if you haven't been affected by the weather, how do you think this is affecting? And Brandell says it's affecting the mood tremendously. And I would agree with you, Brandell. It actually is affecting the mood of the people, especially now since we're actually under or we're on watch, rather, we're on standby. And in my husband's profession, unfortunately, when we have extreme weather conditions, he's not allowed to leave the area. So sometimes I have to evacuate with only myself and the children, which is very, let's say it causes a lot of anxiety. Because I have to pack up the kids and I have to leave my husband behind. And it's not that I can't handle the kids alone. It's because I have to leave my husband in the extreme conditions and not know what's going to become of the situation whenever, he's left. Extreme conditions and not know. So need to know, I'm going to need you to turn down the system, or if you have another device. There you go. Okay, you muted your mic, but whenever you come on to speak, you may have to either pause the live or mute your live because it's going to feedback. Okay, you muted your mic, but whenever you come on to speak, you may have to either pause the live or mute your live because it's going to feedback. Mute your mic, need to know. Mute your mic, King. You may have to either pause the live or mute your live because it's going to feedback. Mute your mic, need to know. Mute your mic. All right, there we go. All right, so I have my first king on the platform tonight. So thank you very much, Need to Know, for joining me tonight. We're going to dive into this topic regarding extreme weather conditions. I don't know how you want to approach or where you want to start, but I'd like to start with going back to talking about HAARP. And for some people have already put in the chat that they know what HAARP is. They've even defined it. Need to Know, would you like to share what you know about HAARP? Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Whenever he unmutes his mic, I'll just stop talking. Okay, there we go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, King.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Whenever you have to turn your device down. Okay, there we go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, King.
Okay, I have a delayed reaction over here.
Yeah, just turn your sound down a little. I can hear you now, King.
Okay,
there is a short delay in it. I apologize for that, but that's really nothing we can fix. I understand what Professor Griff means when he says he has a delay. You may have to use a second device if you want to listen, but you should be able to hear just me and be able to read the chat.
Okay. All right, I hear you. As far as HAARP is concerned, I haven't done that much research on it, but I have watched some documentaries on HAARP.
Okay.
And those devices that they set up all over at least in this country, that could control the weather.
Okay.
Especially hurricanes and earthquakes and those kind of things.
Absolutely. Now, with you watching a few videos and kind of giving yourself a little background information on HAARP, and you kind of have an idea of what we're dealing with when we speak in reference to weather modification and HAARP, how do you think this can be used against the people? Because that's going to lead into my first question.
That's a good question. Professor Griff mentioned something specific about like how weather and especially extreme weather affects people's moods. So I could see that being a tool, especially looking at the timing of it.
Absolutely. And you're on point with that. Look at the timing of the earthquakes and where it's happening. And I walk also, like I said, we're on standby right now to evacuate because we're getting ready to get hit with a storm. At this time, we don't know if it's going to hit as a hurricane or if it's going to hit as a tropical storm, because right now it's kind of just rocking back and forth into the Gulf. And for those people that are not familiar with hurricanes, whenever weather like this hits the Gulf of Mexico, the water is extremely hot. The Gulf of Mexico is extremely hot. So whenever the weather hits the Gulf of Mexico, whenever it hits that body of water, that actually plays a huge role into how large a storm can grow. It also, we don't know once it hits the Gulf which way it's going to turn. And so that kind of leads me, let me backtrack a little bit and go into my first question, because I don't want to give away too much at the beginning. I'm going to start with this first question. What is the most effective way to exterminate a population? We're going to go deep with this topic. What is the most effective way that if the government wanted to exterminate the population, what do you think, family, is the most effective way that they could go about doing this? Okay, Hassan says biological chemical warfare. Quan, hurricanes, we live in the same state, so absolutely. Said Ilka and Angelin, I'm sorry if I tear your name up. Food, absolutely. Water. They can tamper, the government can literally tamper with anything that we need to survive. But since tonight we're talking about weather as a weapon, that's kind of a giveaway to that first question. But the answer is truly, I want you to think about this answer for a second and how it applies. The most effective way that the government can exterminate a population of people is starvation. It's not really weather. And I'm going to tell you why, because they realized that lots of people have gone through the motions of doing the necessary research, and that people are actually taking the time to look into the multiple ways that the government can attack us in, with the absolute agenda of exterminating us as a people. So that's why I say starvation, because that's going to lead into the second point that I wanted to make. I was going to turn it into a question, but I'll just turn it into a point. Starvation is the reason that starvation is the most effective way, literally, because it's undetectable. Not a lot of us are thinking in terms of undetectable ways. That way is undetectable because they're actually manipulating the weather. And for those people who don't know anything about the terms that we're using, when we speak in terms of HAARP, when we speak in terms of geoengineered weather, all of those things are weather modification. Those things are all happening around us right now. And some people literally have no idea that this is happening. So that's why I'm bringing this topic to the floor tonight for us to have a discussion, because all of this plays a role into what's going on as of today. California's gotten hit 3 times already with earthquakes and several aftershocks and tremors. And now Louisiana is getting ready, is gearing up. New Orleans is already underwater. And I live along the coast of Louisiana. So we're all gearing up and getting ready to prepare for a disaster. Okay, even though this hurricane is not a large hurricane, It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because hurricanes, we can predict when they are coming. What we cannot predict is the extent of damage that it's going to cause whenever it hits land. That is the thing that we fear the most. We don't know. And Katrina was a prime example of that. Katrina was, I want to say by the time Katrina hit Louisiana, it was a Cat 3, cat meaning category. It's a category 3. To us, a category 3 is not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. What hurt the people of New Orleans is what happened when that category 3 came through and the levees broke. It wasn't Katrina per se. It was the levees that broke. When the levees gave, that's what caused all the mayhem in New Orleans. So you have to ask yourself, were those levees breached on purpose? Or, what is it just something that came along with that storm? And then even go back and ask yourself, was Hurricane Katrina in itself a modified storm that was pushed upon the people? Thank you very much, Brendel Boy. Much appreciated, family. You have to ask yourself these questions because, yes, before weather was actually modified or the government was tampering with the weather, before all of this started happening, of course, I'm sure there were weather issues that were happening before the government started tampering with any of the weather. But now that the government has the means to actually modify the weather or engineer the weather to do whatever it wants, you have to ask yourself, when is the next disaster going to happen and what is the agenda behind the disaster? Hurricane Harvey, for those of you who are not familiar with Hurricane Harvey was absolutely a modified storm because that storm sat over the areas in and around the Houston area. That was a storm that was manufactured, definitely manufactured. All you had to do is pay attention to the ins and outs. And like I said, people that live in Louisiana, we kind of have a little up and up on others because we take the time. We understand how all of this works. We know how storms work here. So like I said, Katrina was a Cat 3 when it hit land, and a Cat 3 really doesn't cause that much damage. It really doesn't cause as much damage, let's say, as a Category 5, because by the time she hit land, she was a 3. But it's when the levees broke that caused the most damage to the city of New Orleans. So I'm going to pose another question to you before we move forward. And I want you to give me some information in the chat room. Or I now have 2 kings on board. I have Need to Know, and I also have Mr. Paul Fields, who just joined the platform. So salute to you. I got the kings on deck tonight. I'm so excited. But I want you all to give me some information on who Nikola Tesla was. There's a reason why I'm asking about Tesla. Just whenever I bring up points and I bring up questions, just know that all of this information is going to tie together. So again, I'm going to ask you, let me know what you know about Nikola Tesla, because he plays a role in weather modification. And anybody on the panel, if you want to speak on it, the floor is yours. Okay, aside. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I actually have a book about Nikola Tesla. He was trying to invent, well, not invent, but he was talking about wireless energy and the ability to transmit energy over long distances, probably around the world. And he's actually the one that really he outdid Edison, because Edison invented direct current. He was going to use batteries to power everything. Nikola Tesla is the one that used generators, which is what we use today. But he was talking about being able to just pull energy right out the clouds, right out the vibration of the earth itself. So, and speaking of this one, about this one, didn't he invent the earthquake machine?
You're
That's probably
exactly
what you're talking about.
exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's where I'm going with this. He is actually deemed the father of weather modification. He did create that machine. Can you tell us a little bit more about the machine if you have more information on it?
Well, yeah, he built something that it had a tempo. So it would use a lot of like I don't know, it has a lot of moving parts, but it would vibrate the area around it. And it would tap into the frequency of whatever it was. You could dial it into the frequency and it would shatter it. I remember on Mythbusters, they tried to discredit it and they put one on this bridge. And then they realized they could feel the vibration of this little thing on both sides of the bridge. And then they thought, ooh, it's so stupid that we're standing on the same thing that we're testing to see if it could destroy it. And they shut it down. That was
Yeah, they
funny.
real. Yeah, I used to watch that show. I know the show that you're talking about. Yeah, they realized it was a bad idea in case something went wrong. So I don't remember if they went through with it or not. I think they changed their mind about it. But you're
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah, they
right.
did.
Which book did you read by Tesla?
It's not by him, it's really just about him.
Okay.
Someone someone bought me that as a gift because I kept talking about him.
Okay. And I actually have a couple of ebooks on Tesla. So if you all want the ebooks, I don't mind sharing them. All you have to do is send me an email and just say, do you have any information on Tesla? And I will send you, I'll go dig through my stuff and see what I have. But I can remember finding two ebooks about him. And I didn't have to have a chance to read the one on the weather modification and his role in weather modification. I've read a bunch of research articles regarding Tesla. That's how I know he has the title of or they deemed him the father of weather modification. And it actually, what you were hitting on was the Tesla was using the electromagnetic radiation to modify the weather. That was actually his original concept. So it's more than just modifying the weather. If you think about it, I just mentioned the word electromagnetic and radiation. So it's not just a storm or an earthquake. I mean, if you really think about it, what else could this technology potentially do? When you think in terms of electromagnetic and radiation. Because if you break down the word electro, we're talking about electricity, magnetic, and then magnetic means things are attract or repel each other, and then you get hit with the word radiation. So not only can it be used to modify weather, what other things do you think that this technology can be used to do to people?
Good or bad?
I'm gonna say it could be damaging to people. Absolutely damaging to people.
I know electricity can affect, well, if they could affect the electromagnetic spectrum, they could mess with your bio electromag, your bioelectric system, your rhythms that, um, amongst other things, your sleep.
Exactly. Yeah, Professor Griff talks about this a lot. The way hip hop music has been weaponized today, that same application applies. So when you think in terms of electromagnetic radiation, you're right on it. Need to know it could be used to control the mind. It can control whether, and you brought up sleep. Absolutely. It can affect our sleep. It affects the rhythm of our bodies the same way that weather does, which is why I'm glad Professor Griff asked the question of how does it affect your mood? Because weather modification doesn't just cause damage to property and to the into land and cause and cause all this demolition. It actually affects the overall body. It affects us as a people. Um, think of that, and also keep in mind the extensive conversations that we've had about 5G. And you put all of that together, and we have to we're in for it. So we have to make sure that we're always on the up and up when it comes to keeping up with this information. If we don't already know this, we have to make sure that we're always researching, which is why I love having the opportunity to come on this platform so I could learn something new, because there's always something new that I can take away. No matter how many times I read something or go over something, there's always something new that I could pick up on. So you definitely, even though you probably didn't think you knew too much about this, need to know you have a lot of information that you just shared. And so with that, I'm going to actually go into a very short video because there's some points I'd like to bring out. And we'd like to hear from you, Mr. Paul, if you're still with us. Once I go into the video, I'd like to hear from you and what you have to say. The very first thing that we're actually going to start with is looking at, let's see, which one am I going to start with? Okay, and I also have information on this as well. It's actually about a 40-page report on HAARP weather control, and it's about the subcommittee hearings. And what you're going to learn from this, or what some of you are not learning this for the first time. Some of you already know about this information. So if you do, please share the knowledge in the chat room or up on the panel. But I'm going to open with, I'm going to cut a part of one video, and then there's another piece of a video that I'd like to share with you. And then we'll build from there, because there's something else I want you all to take a look at and examine with me. But this first part, you're going to hear an very old clip, because it's going to sound like it's extremely old audio, and it is. And the catch about this is that you're going to realize this has been going on for quite some time. This is not new information. This is very old information. And then we'll move on from there. So let me start with this first clip. What you're going to hear is a clip from the U.S. Congress subcommittee hearing on weather modification.
The Los Angeles Times on April 21st, you said that you told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Okay, did everybody just hear what was said? This is only 13 seconds in. I'm going to go back and start it again.
The Los Angeles Times on April 21st, you said that you told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest.
Two things, which is the opening question I had for you. What was the most effective way to exterminate a population of people? Starvation. Now you're hearing it in a U.S. Congress subcommittee hearing. It's very old information, but a lot of people don't know that this information is even out there. And I have the report. If you want it, shoot me an email after, and I'll send it to you. But very old information. You heard things that we talk about from time to time. We touch on the New World Order. We touch on mind control and us being controlled as a people, because we hit on 5G. So this information is really, it's not new. It's new, but it's not new to some of us. So let me let the clip finish playing.
Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own, that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
This technology is just as old as World War II. That's how old this information is.
Nikola Tesla was an eccentric genius and was widely seen as the great rival to Thomas Edison.
Around 1891, Tesla invented the type of towering transformer coils still in use today to generate high voltage currents for studying electricity. It was Tesla who developed alternating current, the electrical current that we use to power our homes and appliances. It was also Tesla who put man on his quest to control the weather. He developed a chilling theory for controlling the weather using extremely low-frequency waves, or ELF waves. If you've been to a rock concert and felt the low-frequency vibrations of the music pounding from the speakers, ELF waves are similar to that. ELF waves are low-level electrical currents that are discarded from electrical power lines, electrical wirings in our homes, even electrical equipment in our cars. These are normally emitted at levels so low that they won't harm you. Tesla theorized that if ELF waves could be beamed into the ionosphere, in the upper reaches of the atmosphere, man could change the course of weather. The ELF waves would create heat, altering the molecular structure of the ionosphere, pushing it out into space.
When you heat a certain region of the ionosphere, it literally pushes it up and creates what would look like a column of space, and the lower atmosphere then rushes in to fill that space, and as it does, it changes the flow of jet streams within the region, pressure systems, and in that respect, it could manipulate weather.
What this means is the heated ionosphere acts like a giant dam, rerouting the path of the jet stream. The jet stream flows between 6 and 9 miles above the Earth's surface and reaches speeds up to 300 miles per hour.
The jet stream is a focused, high-velocity rope of air that moves billions of gallons of water around our world, like a giant river at 50, 60,000 feet up. It moves all the water around our world for rain, for storms. This is the lifeblood of planet Earth.
Could Tesla's theories help create a new generation of covert weather weapons?
It was the Russians that were creating this signal.
Perhaps it's already here. July 1976. Strange, unexplained blackouts in worldwide communications plague the globe. Ham radio operators all over the U.S. are picking up seemingly random, unknown radio signals. It's causing static interference with radio, television, and even telephone transmissions all across North America.
This signal was a tapping that would go for like 10 beats and then stop for a bit, and 10 beats and stop for a bit.
U.S. scientists discovered the cryptic signal is coming from the Soviet Union. They assign it an innocuous name.
It was called the Russian woodpecker because it was the Russians that were creating this signal, and the sound that the ham operators heard was essentially that sort of clicking, pecking sound.
Here is an actual tape recording of the mysterious signal. Satellite photos reveal the Russians have secretly constructed a gigantic radio transmitter and are covertly transmitting extremely low-frequency waves, otherwise known as ELF waves, into the atmosphere over North America. The Russians would continue beaming this signal until at least 1989, the last time they were detected. But why? Between the years of 1988 and 1992, during the California drought, an anomaly occurs in the jet stream. The winds appear to change direction, blowing east to west instead of west to east, indicating the jet stream coming into the west is suddenly much weaker than normal, causing a drought. By 1995, the jet stream returns to normal. The Soviets deny any involvement in weather warfare. Still, believers feel the denial is not surprising. In fact, it's expected.
One of the significant elements of weather warfare is the plausible deniability angle to it. You can't really attribute it to anyone at all because you don't know if it's just the weather or if it's some more sinister military application that you're being subjected to.
If you can trigger nature to do the work for you, you can raise covert wars, which our country and many others are famous for, and yet have the deniability that goes along with it.
Weather experts from NOAA and from the National Weather Service can't explain why the jet stream anomaly occurred. Perhaps it's all just a part of Mother Nature's unpredictable ebbs and flows. Still, it's no coincidence that the United States began building its own mysterious array of antennas in February 1992. They are located in Gakona, Alaska. The project is called HAARP.
HAARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, originally a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy in cooperation with a number of academic institutions.
It is today the world's largest radio broadcasting station, but it's not designed to broadcast for human ears. It uses unique patented ability to focus the energy coming out of the antenna field and injects that energy into a spot at the very top of the atmosphere in a region called the ionosphere.
HAARP is comprised of 180 antennas, approximately 72 feet tall, linked together to function as one giant steerable antenna. Steerable because it can aim millions of watts of ELF waves into one tiny patch of the atmosphere.
The amount of energy we're talking about here is 3.6 million watts. To give you an idea of what that is, the largest legal AM radio station in North America is 50,000 watts. HAARP is 72,000 50,000 watt radio stations injecting their entire output into a spot that's about 12 miles across by about 2.5 miles deep by about 90 miles up.
This is where HAARP is pointing. It's an area located roughly 300 miles from Anchorage. The U.S. military says HAARP is merely being used to study the physical and electrical properties and behavior of the ionosphere for both civilian and defense purposes. But another theory has surfaced. The intense energy being beamed into the sky by HAARP is actually heating up the atmosphere, causing weather changes.
HAARP is being used for weather modification. The military's own record proves it. They've admitted it within their own documents, and yet they still deny it to the public.
Dr. Brooks Agnew has researched ELF wave technology for the past 30 years and is convinced HAARP's effect on the ionosphere does alter the weather.
HAARP couldn't affect the jet stream directly, but indirectly it could, because if you push the ionosphere out into space, then the stratosphere just under the ionosphere has to move to fill in that gap. When it moves, it could pull the jet stream with it, thus rerouting it hundreds of miles, changing the way water moves through our atmosphere.
Dr. Agnew has devised a demonstration to show how HAARP could manipulate the atmosphere.
So what we've done is we've got a cloud generator up here. It's an ultrasonic nebulizer. It's going to create real water particles, just like you would find in a cloud. What we're seeing now is we're actually filling this chamber with microscopic water particles. You can see that it's almost completely filled with water vapor. It's beginning to condense a little bit on the sides, just so that you can see the detail. We've got a nice dense fog, just like you were sitting inside a cloud at 50,000 feet.
At the bottom of the cloud chamber, Dr. Agnew has constructed an ELF wave transmitter, a miniature version of HAARP.
We're only using 100 watts. It's perfectly safe.
When Dr. Agnew turns on the ELF wave transmitter and begins shooting ELF waves into the simulated cloud, the cloud begins to move up to the top of the chamber, taking the moisture with it.
If you get down low enough, you can actually see a clear layer above the antenna. It is actually pushing these water particles up. And that's exactly how HAARP works.
Okay, I did put the link to that video. Due to copyright, of course, I can't show it on the screen, so we can only listen to the audio. But I put the link to the video we just listened to in the chat room. And you know that I always put every video that we listen to, whether it's on this show or on Professor Griff's show, I always put them into a playlist on my YouTube page. So if you just click on my name, I'm sorry, click on my picture, or if you're on a computer, look to the right and click on the 3 dots, and it'll take you straight to my YouTube page. And I always put the videos in a playlist. So this video will actually be, it's already there. It's in the playlist for July 2019 Sirius Mindz Institute. I know that was a lot of information to take in, but I wanted to let that clip play all the way through before I pause it. And I want to bring forth one point, and then I'm going to turn it over to anyone on the panel who wants to talk about this. But I paid attention to there were 2 different people that spoke, 2 different men that spoke, and they both said the same thing, that the government openly admits to this on paper, meaning in the committee hearings, but they continue to lie to the public. I hope you all caught that, because it was said twice, at least twice. Okay, anyone on the panel want to hit on some points that we just listened to, or is there something we need to expound on based on what we just heard?
Hello.
How you doing, Mr. Paul?
Oh, I'm glad to be here with y'all tonight.
Peace and blessings. How are you? You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Listen, earlier you was talking about hurricanes. Well, sister, I live in Mississippi, so we right here with y'all.
Absolutely. Yeah, y'all get hit pretty bad, just like we do. Always on the up and up.
Yes, but I'll tell people everything hit Louisiana, look out Mississippi.
Right.
Well, I was just looking here. I Googled it. Tesla, this was a bad boy, and not in a good way. But I want to throw y'all a little curve here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Did y'all know that Donald Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, when Nikola Tesla died, he got his papers, and he is one of the ones that made the X-ray machine. And these were some bad boys. I'm just telling you, and it was not nothing to help poor people.
I'm glad that you brought that point forward, because honestly, I knew about this. This is actually part of the research that I have on Tesla. I knew that the Trump family bought his research, and do I think that Tesla died naturally? Absolutely not. But I think that's how they got hold to his information. I think if the Trump family didn't purchase it, I think it was stolen. That's just my opinion based on what I've read. But you're right about that.
Hasn't that always been rich white folk way of getting things, stealing it?
Absolutely. Well, that's how it goes. I used to be a STEM coach. I don't know if everybody's aware of what STEM is, but that's the new thing nowadays, and we're trying to implement it. I actually implemented a lot of science, technology, engineering, and math into elementary grades. Okay. And I was a coach, so I would go in and actually model lessons and do projects for teachers. I would model for teachers but I would use their classroom. In other words, because I didn't have students, I was out of the classroom by that time once I became a coach. And so I was coaching students, coaching teachers rather, but I was using their students to actually model how to do STEM projects with their students and embed it into the regular curriculum. And we experimented with some of the things at the very end of this video with cloud seeding. There's little projects that you can teach your kids. I mean, all this stuff is it's available. The information is out there. But cloud seeding is not anything that's new. That's actually what they use to create the massive storms that they create. It stems from what they call cloud seeding. But you can mimic all of this with some simple tools around the house. I mean, it's not difficult to do. So you imagine the government doing that on a massive scale, and it's it's mind blowing.
It's really a word that most people don't like. It's really demonic how they do stuff just to push an agenda. And at the end of the day, that's really all it is, an agenda. It's going to be our way, and we don't care what we have to do, who we have to kill, who we have to tear down to get it. And it's really pathetic because,
right.
As a whole, as a nation, we're really better than that. But it's just, a few elite that are rich with 500 people, richest people, billionaires in the world. And they like the Campbell. Every time you pop open a can of Campbell soup, you're supporting that family. The Astor family, it's just a lot. All these bloodline families that have made up their mind that no one's going to get in the wealth with them, And if you're not connected to them with some kind of way, you're just not going to be in that club, which I would want to be, because I'm like you. I would want to destroy my people because there is a judgment day coming. I heard Griff say that one time. Judgment day is coming.
Yes, absolutely. Judgment day is coming, and it's coming soon. We have to hang in there, and and unity is the key during these tumultuous times. And that's one of the messages. If I had to leave a message with the people, I would say just cling together. Let's unite during this tumultuous times and put our differences aside, because we have to pay attention to what's happening around us. We don't have time to disagree and fight over things that are useless and not contribute to us being aware and alert and, being ready and ready to weather. And I hate to say it, but be ready to weather the storm, because, they're going to continue to find ways to modify our mind. They're going to try and find, continue to find ways to keep us, quote unquote, under control. They're going to always find ways to control us. So it's up to us to continue to seek the knowledge and unite as we are doing today and as we do every day on this platform, so that we can build on topics like this. And like I said, it takes going back and looking at past things, because you can tie things back into history, because it all stems from somewhere. There's a starting point for everything that's happening out there. It just didn't fall out of the blue sky, out of the clear blue sky. All of this stuff is being pulled from technology that was already out there. And I think it was Hassan that brought up a very good point about the Ankh being a semiconductor. I saw that while I was watching the video, and when he made that comment, I wanted to pause and pause the video and say something, because you realize that they pretty much stole all of the technology that stemmed from, including Tesla. They took all of this information from ancient Kemet and ancient Egypt. So yes, definitely the Ankh is a semiconductor. That's where they got they stole every piece of technology that you see today. Even in today's world of technology, you can trace it all the way back to the ancient lands. I mean, there's not much more I can say about that, but pretty much if you look back, I have a lot of books on Egypt in here. I'm like, I have books all over my bedroom. My bedroom looks like a junky library at the moment, because I get books all the time. And pretty much everything that they're using, that the government is using today, you can trace it back to the motherland and you'll find it.
You can
Go ahead.
remember
Go ahead.
Malcolm, no, I don't mean to cut you off. Remember Malcolm X said that knowledge was power, but if
Mhm.
you don't do nothing with it, it does you no good. You know, and that's the state. I was just sitting there thinking, it's amazing how whenever storms come around, like say we both Southern children, so to
Mhm.
speak, the gas can be $1.25 today and $4 tomorrow, which doesn't make any kind of sense, because if I have to evacuate, me and my wife, okay, you jacking the gas price up, that you know, you're put in a situation to where you have to leave, but it's costing you more.
Right.
Or it's saber rattle over there in Iran, and the gas is $8, $9, $10 gas. It just doesn't make any sense. It just really does.
It doesn't, and it's actually illegal to do so, but they don't. It doesn't stop them from doing it, and it's called price gouging. And it does happen a lot. It's happening here. It's happening right now as we speak. Like I said, we're on standby. The parish right below me has already been under a mandatory evacuation, so they're coming up. I'm only one parish away from the Gulf of Mexico, so Cameron Parish is already evacuated. They've been under evacuation since early today, so they've had to leave. And because it floods down there, but it doesn't take much because they're right on the coast. So I'm right there above them. I mean, let's see, we're probably about 10 minutes away from the Cameron Parish line. So I'm not far away from the coast at all. The Gulf of Mexico is right there. So when those storm surges hit, I mean, it causes massive damage. I mean, just a couple weeks after Hurricane Katrina, we got hit with Hurricane Rita. And, you know, Hurricane Rita is not talked about as much, but Hurricane Rita did a lot of damage here. It's just that the situation in New Orleans was, it left so many people in such a bad condition, and help. It took so long for help to get to all of the victims in Hurricane Katrina that hurricane actually got a lot of and I'm not saying that it shouldn't. It got a lot of coverage, and it should have gotten all the coverage that it gotten. But just a couple weeks after that, we were hit with a Cat 5 storm here. And by the time Rita hit land, I think Rita was a Cat 4 storm, so it caused a lot of damage here. And you know, it was 2 weeks. There's two, and mind you, there are a lot of people from New Orleans here because they evacuated from New Orleans and come here to get hit with another storm. I mean, it was traumatizing for a lot of people. And we're traumatized here a lot, especially in the coastal states. Mississippi, I know that I think it was in the Biloxi area that got hit pretty bad when Katrina hit New Orleans. If I'm not mistaken, it was Biloxi. One of the cities in Mississippi got tore up really bad from that hurricane. But of course, as you said, Mr. Paul, everything has an agenda. I absolutely agree. But we have to examine those agendas. And, you know, the whole goal of it is, you know, like you said, knowledge is power. So we have to continue on this quest for knowledge, because in the end, that's the only thing that's going to save us is knowledge. That's what's going to save us as a people. Unity and continuing to seek the knowledge, because there's a lot to learn from all of this. And so I'm going to move on to the next point that I'm not sure if everyone is aware of, but there's one other thing I want to talk about before we close tonight. And that is, if no one's heard of this before, I want you to start looking it up, because I have another clip I'm going to play. But in that clip, they're going to talk about Operation Popeye. So if none of you are familiar with Operation Popeye, I want you to research that. I want you to, you know, open a tab in Google or something and look up Operation Popeye, because that's something that, and I'm not going to be able to go over it in detail. The video is going to hit on it a little bit, but it actually is going to give you pretty much how the government got involved and how they're using it to their advantage. And before I forget about this point, also in the last video that was just played, I hope that everyone picked up on this, but notice how, because it's going to come out a lot in this next clip that I'm going to share with you all, that they always put, and the United States is notorious for this. They were saying that it was the Russians that caused this, or it was someone else. They put it off on another country attacking us. In other words, they're saying that other countries are using this as a weapon to cause damage to our country, or to bring forth war on this country. So you need to make sure that you're listening to these audio clips. I know that some of you, if you're a visual person like me, you need to see that video. So that's why I put the links in the chat room, and I also save them in a playlist so that you can look at them later, because all we can do from here is to avoid a copyright. We have to actually just listen to the audio. I can't play it here because we'll get hit with a strike, and we sure don't want that on this channel. But I'm going to start the next clip so that we can move on to the next part. But in the meantime, while you're starting, I'm preparing this next clip, I want you to look up Operation Popeye. Operation Popeye.
Form of weather being weaponized. Rain that can trigger devastating floods and wipe cities clean off the map.
If you can make it rain, you can have a profound effect on the battlefield.
One of the critical elements in launching a weatherized battle is being able to control rain and unleash floods.
The military have had a keen interest in the weather basically since day one. There have been a number of times the military have actually succeeded in developing technology to use the weather.
In history, there is a chilling example of a flood that may have been accidentally triggered with a weather weapon. August 15th, 1952. Near the small town of Lynmouth, England, a massive rainstorm strikes. The river swells. Scores die.
It's estimated that 250 times as much rain fell in a period of 24 hours as normally fell in the entire month.
The East Lynn and West Lynn rivers flood their banks. According to the BBC, 90 million tons of water sweep down into the town of Lynmouth.
35 people were killed.
Bodies wash out to sea and are never found. Trees are uprooted, forming dams behind bridges, creating walls of water that carry huge boulders into the village, destroying shops, hotels, and homes. Was this just a freak act of nature? The prevailing theory is that it may have been a British military experiment gone bad, as they had been known to be conducting cloud seeding tests around that same time.
The British military would be experimenting with cloud seeding for the same reason as any government or military, because if you can control the weather, if you can make it rain, you can have a profound effect on the battlefield.
Allegedly, early on the morning of August 15th, 1952, some witnesses had reported seeing Royal Air Force jets flying in the area, at times disappearing from sight high above the cloud deck. Were they on a routine training mission? Or, as some people speculate, were they dumping payloads of silver iodide into the clouds? Silver iodide is one of the most common chemicals used for cloud seeding. It forces the tiny ice crystals that make up the cloud to fuse together. Once enough tiny ice crystals fuse together, they become heavy and fall to the earth in the form of rain. And on that fateful day in August of 1952, rain fell in record amounts. Did the Royal Air Force embark on daring cloud seeding experiments without the public's knowledge?
Some people reported seeing aircraft undertaking strange maneuvers. And it subsequently emerged that there was an experiment codenamed Operation Cumulus, which was indeed an attempt at weather modification. Interestingly, many of the documents relating to Operation Cumulus have disappeared and are not available from the National Archives.
Little over a decade later, the U.S. military conducted experiments to bring weather to the battlefield. October 1966. The Vietnam War is in full swing. U.S. military scientists are devising a way to slow down enemy forces using the weather.
U.S. had gone from advisor status to in-field combat status, and were not doing well. As a result of not being able to make progress on the ground, the U.S. went to bringing the battle into the atmosphere above the battlefield.
The Air Force employed a groundbreaking military directive called Project Popeye.
Project Popeye was a weather modification program that involved cloud seeding. And the idea was to produce or exaggerate the monsoon rains that are traditional in that region.
Experiments are carried out beforehand with the military aircraft dropping silver iodide crystals in clouds over a strip of the Laos Panhandle, east of the Belovens Plateau in the Mekong River Valley. 50 cloud seeding runs are conducted. 82% of the clouds seeded produce rain within a brief period.
So Project Popeye then became Operation Popeye. It became a proper military program during the Vietnam War.
The goal of Operation Popeye was to extend the monsoon season and create an inordinate amount of rainfall by seeding clouds over the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
The Ho Chi Minh Trail was the primary supply route by which the North Vietnamese Army really supplied its troops that were operating in combat forces operating in South Vietnam, as well as supplying the Viet Cong. So it was the most significant logistical center of gravity to the North Vietnamese, and it was an important strategic objective for the United States and our ally South Vietnam to try to interdict that supply line to cut off those supplies to the enemy.
Operation Popeye's objectives are to soften road surfaces on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, cause landslides along roadways, and wash out river crossings.
The military had their own catchphrase as a result of this program, and it was "Make mud, not war."
They flew over 2,600 missions from a period of 1966 to 1972, and it's believed that it did exacerbate the amount of rainfall and probably extended the monsoon season by 30 to 45 days.
It had limited success. They did succeed in generating rain. They did succeed in turning the Viet Cong resupply route into a quagmire of mud. It didn't slow them down a bit. They were bringing the stuff in on bicycles and they just slogged through the mud.
Operation Popeye showed that weather can be brought to the battlefield as rain, but can it also be weaponized in the form of a hurricane? Some say it already had.
Some people believe that Katrina was weather warfare at its most potent.
Weather has been used on the battlefield with only limited success. But the technology is already here, paving the way for a bleak future once it's perfected. And some historians point to one haunting incident as proof. August 23rd, 2005. The National Weather Service is tracking an unassuming storm forming over the Bahamas. A storm this size rarely damages buildings or even takes lives. In fact,
and before we continue listening to this, my heart goes out to those who suffered at the hands of Hurricane Katrina. My heart goes out to each and every one of you because I know that traumatic experience still it brings forth a place of pain and somewhat suffering because some of you lost everything, including loved ones. So my heart goes out to you.
At this point, it's simply known as Tropical Depression 12. But that will change. It will unexpectedly grow into the mother of all storms, a Category 5 hurricane with winds up to 175 miles per hour. It is named Hurricane Katrina. When Katrina slams into the Gulf Coast states, it will become one of the deadliest disasters in U.S. history, costing $81 billion in property damage and claiming more than 1,800 lives. Like other hurricanes of that year, Katrina showed some very peculiar movements never before seen in a major hurricane.
The 2005 hurricane season, there were some very amazing, strange anomalies. There were some things that should not have happened. One of the things was that many of the hurricane tracks were in almost straight lines, and hurricanes don't go in straight lines.
An ominous theory has surfaced that seems far-fetched.
There are some extremely sinister conspiracy theories circulating about Hurricane Katrina. Some people believe that Katrina hit where it hit with the power that it struck because of Russian or Chinese weather control experiments.
Just before coming on shore, Katrina did an abrupt 90-degree turn, hard left, and went down the beach for a substantial distance before coming on shore. So we have speculations that our enemies had been throwing hurricanes at us. We were being bombarded, attacked with the weather.
So far, there has been no conclusive proof of such a conspiracy. Most attribute Katrina's path to the vagaries of a hurricane, but it does illustrate the potential of such a weapon.
I want you to pay attention to how they're passing this off on someone else when this is our very own government. This is not an enemy that is doing it to us. It's our own government.
To control and direct a hurricane gives you power at least equivalent to nuclear weapons. A hurricane could be the ultimate weapon of war.
The very next year after Katrina, something strange happened. According to the National Weather Service, not a single hurricane made landfall in 2006. Would the U.S. military be using HAARP to fend off hurricane attacks? An irregular high-pressure zone above the southeastern United States points to this conclusion, according to Jerry Smith.
This high-pressure dome has never existed before. It's never been seen to have a high-pressure dome parked over the southeastern United States for the entirety of a hurricane season. It's never happened before. And it's happened 3 years in a row now. This high-pressure dome worked like the rubber bumpers on a pinball machine, and every hurricane, like a pinball, hit it and bounced off, safely going back out to sea. The date coincidence of HAARP being completed and this buffer being in effect, I think, is very telling.
Meteorologists say the high-pressure area is just a weather anomaly, one of many that occurs in nature. But its intensity puzzles many meteorologists. Is this the same type of manufactured high-pressure system that experts feel hovered over California from 1988 to 1992? Today, nations still deny they are weaponizing weather, but there are suggestions to the contrary. This U.S. Air Force report graphically outlines the military's desire to exploit and manipulate the weather for the purposes of war by the year 2025.
Okay, I'm going to stop right here because I want to make sure that everyone just paid attention to what was said. Could anyone, whether it be in the chat or on the panel, repeat what was just said in regards to the weaponization of weather and the particular year that they're referring to? Okay, they did say 2025. Miss Kim, do you remember what they said about the year 2025? What's the goal? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let you know what they just said. They're saying that by the year 2025, the goal is to own the weather as a weapon. In other words, they want to be able to utilize weather as a force multiplier. Hence, owning the weather by the year 2025. There's red flags that go up whenever I hear things like that. Of course, 2025 is only a few years from now. But what troubles me about what was just said in the video is that I think 2025 is here already. I'm going to rewind that just a little bit.
Weaponizing weather, but there are suggestions to the contrary. This U.S. Air Force report graphically outlines the military's desire to exploit and manipulate the weather for the purposes of war by the year 2025. According to one of the most harrowing lines in this report, quote, "Weather modification is a force multiplier with tremendous power that could be exploited across the full spectrum of war-fighting environments."
The 2025 report on weather was essentially a military analysis of what could we do, whether it was to create rainfall, create drought conditions. The idea was by 2025, we would be able to manipulate virtually every aspect of weather.
It expressly states how and why the United States Air Force should own the weather. What technologies will be necessary to fight future wars using weather as a weapon.
Do you hear the justification, family? They want to use it as a weapon of mass destruction, basically. Like this is not already happening. You see, the reason I choose certain videos to use while we're actually having these types of discussions is because I want to pick apart, of course, I want to be able to analyze and pick apart what is being said in the videos. But also, I want you to pay attention. Like I said, it's not always about what people are saying. Pay attention to what they're not saying. Because if you think about it, I brought up the point on Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey was one of those hurricanes that it kind of was just, imagine a rocking chair going back and forth. And it was just like a funnel soaking up water. And it sat on top of and the surrounding areas of Houston, Texas, and was able to flood that area out. Now, I'm going to apply that to what's happening right now. As of 2 days ago, New Orleans was getting hit by storms. And the storm, Barry has not made his arrival yet on land. However, if you talk to anyone or if there's anyone from New Orleans in the chat tonight, they will tell you that they're underwater. So the storm, even though the storm hasn't hit land yet, they're already experiencing massive flooding to where some of them can't even get home. So there's no way that they can say the goal is to be able to own, quote unquote, own the weather so that they can use it. And they even use the Air Force as one branch of the military who should have complete control over weather modification as a means for war. I'm sure there's other weapons that they can use aside from weather manipulation as a method for a war tactic, so to speak. So I brought forth that piece of information because I wanted to make sure that you all understand that at no point did I ever believe the 2025, because of course I've watched this already before I brought it to you all. But 2025 is here already in terms of the application that there are in reference to what they're speaking on today. 2025 is already here. They can already manipulate the weather. So what else is there to do by year 2025? Okay, you think in terms of chemtrails, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, snowstorms, massive snowstorms. All of those things can be manipulated already. So what is to come in 2025 that we don't already know? That's the question.
The rationale for this is really the ultimate war is if you never have to fire a round and nobody ever knew you launched the fight. And this is what weather warfare offers militaries around the world.
With our deadline of 2025 quickly approaching, the future of weather warfare is cause for concern.
The worst case scenario is that satellite-based weapon systems will turn the Earth's weather on its head. It could rain in the desert, and you could have a heat wave in the Arctic.
If an enemy could change the jet stream over North America, it could plunge North America into an ice age.
50 years from now, geophysical manipulation of the planet could be the weapon of war, where it's not bombs and bullets, it's earthquakes, it's tidal waves, manipulation of weather systems. Those become the future of warfare.
When we talk about weather warfare, we are talking about a death technology. This has nothing to do with enhancing life. The aim of weather warfare is catastrophic environmental destruction and horrific loss of life.
In the future, he who controls the weather will probably control the earth.
And of course, I hope you paid attention to how this video clip closed. He who controls the weather controls the earth. Okay, anyone on the panel that has anything to add, or I'm going to go through some of the comments in the chat room. If you don't have anything to add, I'll kind of elaborate a little bit on some of the things that I've been reading in the chat room.
Hello?
Uh-huh.
I was just sitting here, Scorpio, just thinking, control. Haven't rich white people had enough control? I mean, we was in slavery 400 years. I mean, come on, how much more control do they really need or want? It's just, it's insane, you know?
It kind of goes back to, you remember once before I told you if white people know the secret that most of our black people don't. And if only our black people knew how powerful we were as a people, they would put aside the differences, because white people already know that if we come together as a people, we can overthrow them at any given moment, because we are the chosen people and we can overturn this at any moment. And I'm not trying to, it's not about control. It's about being able to exist in society. We are not people who want to cause destruction. We're not those people. Okay. And so we have to, the term control comes up all the time, Mr. Paul, simply because they have to keep us under control. Because if you can control a person, then you always have the upper hand on someone. Control is very important to these people, because if they allow us to think for ourselves, if they allow us to have, quote unquote, some forms of freedom, they know that there's a chance that we can come back to and wake up to who we really are, and it's over for them. And so that's why you have this control issue. Now, this is my opinion. You know, some people may feel differently, but I feel that it's because they know how powerful we are as a people. We don't need tools. We don't need weapons. All we need is unity. Come together and we can overthrow this. We can overthrow the oppressor. And so I think that's why the control, you hear it so much, that the word control.
That's true, Scope, because historically, when black people get tired and we get together, like Nat Turner and some of the other greats, hey, we can make a change. But not just so much in a physical fight, it's a spiritual fight too.
Right.
But superiority there too. I'm like Minister Farrakhan. One of these days, one of my friends, our God gonna get tired of this damn stuff, and it's gonna be a change they never believe.
He's absolutely right. And we're waiting on that day. We are waiting on that day. You know, where our people can put those unnecessary things aside and come together because they're tired. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know, I'm there already. You know, a lot of us are there already, but it needs to be more of us.
That's true.
It needs to be more of us. And so I want to say that, you know, before I'm going to give it back to you, Mr. Paul, but I want to say this real quick before I forget. If you don't understand why Professor Griff and I and my husband are putting this preparedness class together and why it's necessary, I hope that this show tonight kind of helps you to understand why we're actually trying to do this. Because I want you to think about this. Tonight, we've learned, a lot of us have learned a lot from the things that we've discussed and some of the video clips that I've put into or embedded into the show. A lot of this stuff is new to people, and a lot of it just added to some knowledge that you already have. But the reason we want this preparedness class to go off with a hitch is because we have to be mindful of what's next. We need to be prepared for what's next. As a people, we must always know or be prepared to survive through the worst of storms, is what I want to say or convey to you as a message, because it may not be weather next time. You know, there may come a day that we have to go back to living the way that our ancestors did, and that's living off the land, being able to survive without all of the fancy technology we have surrounding us. And so the preparedness class is one of those things that are, you know, will give you or kind of wake up some things in us that we've kind of put to the side because we have so much convenience today. You know, there may come a time where we don't have all of these things, and we will have to learn how to do things for ourselves, in other words. So, need to know, do you have anything you want to add? There we go.
Okay. Wow. This is some real stuff. Like the good brother just said. Was that Paul?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think Professor Griff was hitting on a point, and so are you, that we don't need that kind of technology. We could control that with our minds. Griff was hitting on a point, and so are you, that we don't need that kind of technology. We could control that with our minds. Griff was hitting on a point, and so are you, that we don't need that kind of technology. We could control that with our minds. Griff was hitting on a point, and so are you. I don't know how that's happening.
Paul, mute your mic. Mr. Paul, can you mute your mic?
Griff was hitting on a point, and so are you. I don't know how that's happening.
Paul, mute your mic. Mr. Paul, can you mute your mic?
Griff was hitting on a point, and so are you. I don't know how that's happening.
Paul, mute your mic. Mr. Paul.
Anyway, that was cool. Sorry, I got a cold right now. My voice sounds kind of.
That's okay. Go ahead. We can hear you loud and clear.
Anyway, that was cool. But sorry, I got a cold right now. My voice sounds kind of.
That's okay. Go ahead. We can hear you loud and clear.
Anyway, that was cool. Hey, it's looping back again. That's not me. Voice sounds kind of.
That's okay. Go.
Okay. With all this stuff that they're trying to do, it's not going to work. They think it is, but they got another thing coming.
Okay, I'm not sure why it's looping back and forth. I'm not sure why. When it's like whenever you unmute your mic,
Hey, I'm not sure why it's looping back and forth.
And it could be something on my end. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure why.
When it's like whenever you unmute your mic,
Hey, I'm not sure why it's looping back and
need to know, are you still with me? I think Mr. Paul, we lost him on the hangout.
Oh, I'm here.
So there, okay. Need to know, are you still with
I don't
me?
know
I
what's
think Mr.
looping.
Paul,
Is it
me?
me?
We lost him on the hangout.
Oh, I'm here.
So there, okay. Need to know, are you still with
I don't
me?
know
I
what's
think Mr.
Yeah, I think Paul left. Hey, I like what Hassan Burton just put up there. Yeah, he's right. Man plans, but God laughs. So, yeah, this is some serious stuff we need to be prepared for. And that preparedness class, that's the thing that we need. Uh, is very timely. I remember in the reading about the earthquake, they were talking about disaster preparedness, but after the fact, they should have been talking about that before. But yeah, that's why this is good. I really appreciate this program and this platform because it's helping us be aware of what's coming our way and what's already here. Peace. I'm gonna turn it back over.
Okay, I'm not sure what's going on with the mics. It may start looping again. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the technology in here. So I'm not sure what's going on with the mics. It may start looping again. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the technology in here. So I'm not sure what's going on with the mics. It may start looping again. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the technology in here. So I'm not sure what's going on with the mics. It may start looping again.